Today we're going to be making penne pasta with Italian sausage in a tomato cream sauce. We have a lot of ingredients for this. We are going to use an onion, some garlic, extra virgin olive oil, a pound of penne pasta, a pound of hot Italian sausage, some heavy cream, a package of mascarpone cheese, 2 cans of diced tomatoes, a large can of crushed tomatoes, a few spices, some salt, and for our equipment we're going to be using a pot, a pan, a few bowls, a knife, and a cutting board. You and yours? The first step in this recipe is to make the base for the sauce. To do this, first we're going to cut a large onion. Now we need to chop about 3 cloves of garlic, and to start we're going to smash the head of garlic and pull out 3 cloves, discarding any of the excess paper that comes off. And put these here, and one at a time put your knife over it, put your palm down like this, and press down until you feel it crack. And then you're going to pull the paper off and discard that. Repeat that for each clove of garlic. Now we need to chop the garlic as finely as possible. Got that. Now we're going to saute our garlic and onions. So first we're going to put our pan over about medium heat. And once it comes up to temperature, we're going to pour a couple tablespoons of olive oil into the bottom of the pan and wait for that to heat up. As with our other recipes, we can use a quick test to determine if our oil is hot enough. So we're going to drop a few pieces of onion into the pan, and now that it's sizzling, we know that's hot enough, so we're going to go ahead and add the rest of our onions into the pot. We're going to keep these onions moving. We want them to sizzle. We don't want them to brown, so we're going to turn the heat down just a little bit. Just keep them moving around. I'm going to cook these until they turn slightly translucent. Once we see that the onions are a little bit translucent and they've been cooked through a little bit, we're going to add our garlic and continue cooking it the same way for about 2 or 3 more minutes. The reason we do this is that if we cook the garlic for as long as we cook the onions, the garlic would brown, and when garlic browns it has a very bitter taste, so we're trying to keep the garlic from cooking too much. Now that our onions and garlic have cooked for a few minutes, we're going to add our tomatoes in. We have our large can of crushed and 2 smaller cans of diced. Now we're going to mix this thoroughly to bring the onions up from the bottom and distribute them evenly through the tomatoes. Now we can add our spices. We're going to use a pre-mixed Italian herb mix. If you weren't going to do this, a mixture of thyme, basil, and oregano would also do the trick, but ours is pre-mixed, so it's easy. So we're going to add a little more than a tablespoon, maybe of that. Mix it all the way through. And we're also going to add some red pepper to this to give it some spice, and how much you add of this is entirely up to you. I like it spicy, so I'm going to add a lot. You don't even have to add any if you don't like spicy food. So there we go. And once the sauce starts cooking, you'll be free to adjust the seasonings and the amount of pepper at any time, so don't worry about getting it perfect the first time around. So now we're going to bring this up to a boil on high heat. And then as soon as it starts to boil, we're going to reduce it to low and let it simmer for a while as we cook our sausage. The next step in this process is to cook the sausage that's going to go into the sauce later. We bought pre-rolled sausages or pre-made sausages. If you can find ground sausage in the supermarket, you should probably do that because it's much easier. So what we have to do is we have to actually get the ground sausage kind of mix out of these casings. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut them down their length, just peel the casing off, which will liberate the meat from that, and set the casings aside to be thrown out later. Now what we're going to want to do is kind of break up these sausages into kind of just a pure ground meat. So we're going to use our hands, or if you want, a fork, to kind of just break down these pieces of sausages and kind of pull them apart so that they'll be looser for our final product. So to start cooking our sausage, we're going to bring a pan up to medium-high heat and add a little bit more olive oil here. Wait for that to come up to temperature. Add all of our sausage into our pan. Just like when we ground meat in our other recipes, we're just going to try and move it around. Just keep it moving until it starts to brown. Now that our sausage has been browned, we're going to turn the heat off, and we're going to bring it over here and pour all our sausage into the pot with the sauce. You don't want to let any of that excess fat and oil drain in there because that is not good for you. And once that's all together, we're going to stir this, get the sausage incorporated all the way through there. And once we have it mixed, again, we're going to bring it up to heat and then leave it on low to simmer for about 10 or 15 minutes. About 10 or 15 minutes in the big pot, we're going to mix it up to make sure there's no air bubbles down there. We'll turn off the heat, and then we're going to transfer it back into the pan that we cooked our sausage in to free up some space for us to cook our pasta later. So we're just going to pour this right over here. Try not to let it splash too much. Scrape that in, the extra, you don't want to leave any of it behind. Alright, now we're going to do the same thing we did in the pan, or in the big pot, in this more shallow pan. We're going to bring it up to a very light simmer. We're just going to let that cook for a little bit, soften up the onions, and let those flavors come together. Okay. So we've brought a big pot of water up to a boil with a handful of salt, and now we're going to add our penne pasta. This is 1 pound of pasta. And once it's in, you're going to need to move it around a little bit to make sure none of it sticks to the bottom. And then we're going to bring it back up to a boil, and then from there, time 11 to 12 minutes. We're going to cook it just according to the directions that are on the box. Now that our pasta's done cooking, we checked it for doneness. We're going to turn the heat off, and then we're going to drain out the pasta. So we're going to put the top on it, take it over to the sink, and drain it out. So now we've set our pasta aside and transferred our sauce back into the big pot so it'll be easier to mix. And now what we're going to do is add about half of the mascarpone cheese into this sauce and stir it. This will give us a nice creamy texture and flavor. As you can see, the sauce will start to change color and lighten up. You get a really rich, creamy, cheesy smell coming out of it. Now once that's all stirred in, we're going to add just a dash of heavy cream to thin it out, and again add some creaminess to the tomato sauce. It's really going to add a bit more richness and flavor to it. this sauce back up, and we're going to add all of our pasta back in here, right on top of this. We're going to mix it through all the way to get everything evenly incorporated. Let's turn our heat off. It'll take a little bit of work because that sauce is nice and thick. And then just go down all the way to the bottom, scoop up, and then kind of